Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. One story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories and uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Cup of Joe Show. I'm your host, of course, Joe, and I'm really pumped about today's guest. It's my friend Randy T. This is a guy who knows all about rebuilding your life with grit, humor, and a whole lot of fishing. Randy's sobriety journey started on April 21st, 1999. That's 26 years to you and me. And since then, he's walked through loss, healing, and huge changes, including a big move from Bakersfield, California to East Tennessee. He's a proud step-grandpa, a dog dad to Little Bit and Dolly, and when he's not working a rod and reel, you'll find him cooking up something good or knocking out a home project. Randy's story is one of strength, faith, and fresh starts. I think you're going to love it. So grab a cup of coffee, relax, and let's get into it. How you doing today, Randy?
I think I'm going to make it, Joe. Thank you for asking me to be of service.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I'm excited to learn more about your story. So tell me, what was it like growing up, Randy?
I was an only child, which really surprised my two brothers and my sister. But that's the way I felt growing up. Especially when the drinking started, I just wanted to separate myself from the family, and just because it was really difficult to fit into life, even at an early age. It was really difficult to fit into life. And my mom and dad were not drinkers; they were not addicts, and they always provided. Including the work ethic and the chores, and we never really needed anything. My dad always provided for that. There was a family business, so he always provided, and we always had animals to work with, horses, and we raised our own meat. We grew our own vegetables and stuff like that. We grew our own alfalfa and citrus, and all through my school years, we always had something to do. And I do appreciate my mom and dad for giving us that kind of a work ethic and that kind of a life. But it was trying at times. It was a very heavy-handed type structure, discipline, and the older I got, the more I believe my mom was kind of a religiously, mentally ill, because there were some things that was going on that I was always going to go to hell. I always heard I was going to go to hell. And I'm a teenage boy, and you know what teenage boys do. I was not a saint for sure, but and so that carried with me for a long time. My older brother was about 1 year and 2 weeks older. My younger brother, my little brother, which is about 6 foot tall, he was about 1 year and 4 months younger. And then there was the baby sister. and she was daddy's little girl for sure. For the most part, if you get rid of the bad stuff, it was a good life. Just looking back on it, it was a good life. My mom and dad always, I just throw this in there. My mom and dad would always take care of a cousin or something like that because there was some kind of a family issue going on with the relative. And we always had a cousin staying with us. And later on, I realized it was probably either drugs or alcohol. My cousin Freddie stayed with us one night and stayed for 3 years. So through high school, we were good friends. But there was always something to do. We always had dogs. We always had something to raise. We always had chores. But so that was it. We never really talked about college. through high school because it was a family business to go into, and that never really materialized. So I was actually the only one in my family, out of my two brothers and my sister, that was actually interested in it, and did more work than the rest of them in that business. And about a month after I graduated high school, my dad sold that business. And now, now I'm entered into the school of hard knocks. And then, just my drinking progressed. I always blame somebody for my drinking, but it was the alcoholism I learned later on that it was going to progress no matter what. So that's kind of my childhood. We always lived out in the country. We always lived away from, until I was in high school. We always lived away from mainstream because we always had a little farm or something like that. So,
how old were you when you took your first drink, Randy?
My first drink was when I was 8 years old, and it was a tomato beer. I'll never forget it. It was an original Coors, which you have to have a church key to open. It didn't have a pop top. You had to have one of the church keys to open, like the old pop bottles. And then my granny, I had a granny, she mixed it in tomato beer, and I took a sip, and I remember that. And I could remember tasting the Coors, the original Coors. So that was my first drink. I wasn't an alcoholic. I didn't drink alcoholically then, but about age 12, I started dabbling in a lot more alcohol, a lot more other stuff like weed. So 7th grade. So then I did nothing but try to separate myself from everybody else to get more. There was a lot of progression there, a lot of progression. I could fit in with people if I needed to be around them. I could fit in real easily. I was always pretty funny. Well, I still am. But it just that feeling that we talk about, that ease and comfort, settled in. And then my actual first blackout was when I was 14 years old. And I'm lucky to be alive from that, because I woke up in a puddle of puke. And luckily I was on my side. So I had a friend of mine, much older. He was able to get me a bottle of Southern Comfort. And I drank that whole thing, Joe. And then I don't remember too much. I remember a little bit trying to call my girlfriend Dana. And this is back when you had to walk to the wall and pick up the receiver and then dial. That was my very first drunk dial. I did a lot of that. And then I don't remember too much after that. But I'm lucky to be alive from that night. My first blackout.
So that was probably the first warning sign, really. Look, I mean, probably didn't take it like that, but it, that's a pretty good warning.
Right. No, it had to have been the Southern Comfort. Well, you just learn how to drink wild turkey after that. So, and that's what we did. But we were also involved in 4-H and other little things. And I loved 4-H. I got to work with the animals. We got to go to the fairgrounds every year with the 4-H and show our animals at the county fair. Back then, it was the world's largest junior livestock auction in Kern County. And I did we did a lot of drinking in the barns. We always raised pigs, and we showed pigs growing up. So, but then I would find myself overdoing it, then finding my way up to the bleachers so I could sleep it off. That happened quite a bit.
So you get out of high school, and you had the hopes of working the family business, and the family business is sold. Where do you go from there?
My dad did have a little wrecking yard. He did purchase a little wrecking yard auto dismantling out in Shafter, California. And I went to work for him out there pulling parts, dismantling cars. And this is like old school type. Nothing like they have today. And I was able to get out there and work my ass off and even drink. my dad was in the office selling parts, and I would be out in the back pulling parts, and just keeping a comfortable buzz going. And I did that out in the sun. It would get very hot or cold or whatever. And then as soon as my day was done, I would take a shower, jump in the car, and then go meet with some friends. And Shafter was a few miles outside of Bakersfield. So then I would just travel into Bakersfield and then try to make it home at night. Uh, and it was always drunk driving. Joe, if I drove once, I drove thousands of times drunk. I am very lucky to be alive and not kill anybody. So that was and then my dad sold that business, and I went to work for other people using my last name, and I was able to get a job very easily in the towing industry. It was a towing business, and I was pretty good at it. Emergency road service specialist, and it was very easy to get a job just using my last name. So, and then I would love to go out of town, take these long tow trips out of town because now I could drink or smoke weed or whatever. Then try to, just not get caught on the way back. So there was a lot of progression there. There was a lot of progression with my drinking because as soon as I graduated high school, well, my parents did kick me out for alcohol at 18. Now I'm completely unsupervised. And so even the progression then was picking up because I had nobody to answer to. So and that's the way my life was. Progression. So after
Was
that,
it?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, did anyone? I mean, obviously your parents noticed that your drinking was getting pretty bad. Was there any thought at that time of doing something different, Randy?
Besides drinking and smoking weed?
Yeah.
No, because that was starting to feel natural. It was starting to feel like I'm an adult. This is something I'm supposed to be doing. Even though my parents were not drinkers, I see my dad drunk one time and he said it was the flu. I said, okay, Dad, whatever. I've been drunk. I've been drunk many times before that. My mom would sip on stuff, and then they were not drug addicts. They didn't know anything about recovery. We always took care of somebody, and then when their parents straightened up, we'd send the kids back. And there was a lot of resentment with those kids. Let me tell you, having to live with Aunt Barbara and Uncle Raymond, there was a lot of resentment with those kids. So then I was able to. The progression gets worse. My dad knew a guy who was an ex-cop who had a repossession company, and they needed somebody like me. And so I went to work for Robert Hall. He's long gone. So Bob Hall, and I would go repossess cars, especially in the middle of the night. And it was a fairly dangerous job, but alcohol even helped me do that. But then the progression got to so bad where I stopped answering the phone, Joe. When they would call me to go pick up a car to help go repo a car, I stopped answering the phone because I was either too drunk. You don't do a lot of repossessions at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. You wait until you find the car at 2 a.m. and that's when you snag the car. But by then I was just blitzed. So then I would hear about it the next day, and then I would try to curb my drinking, and so it just always got worse. But then Bob's daughter rolls into town, and I fell in love at first sight. Her name was Randy too, and she was 10 years older. She rolls into town and not doing financially, not doing all that well, and they were taking care of her. Dee and Bob were taking care of her. So every once in a while, her car wouldn't start, and I would have to go over there and get her car started. And that's when we started to get together. and she was obviously about 10 years older. So we did a lot of drinking together. She was an alcoholic too. This is not a pretty story at all. So, and my parents found out about this, Joe, that I'm seeing an older woman, and her parents, my boss, found out. So there was a lot of turmoil, a lot of cringing going on between the whole family. And it finally got so bad that we said, well, fuck it, we're going to leave town. So we packed everything up, whatever we had, and we left town because her parents didn't like me and my parents didn't like her. And they were trying to tell me what I needed to do. And, you know, I was having a pretty good time with Randy. And so we leave town. We go to Florida and get in trouble and got arrested in Florida. They, I guess I could tell this story. We were doing other things than just drinking alcohol. We were trying to make our way through selling some stuff, some speed. And then we went down to this road called Orange Blossom Trail in Orlando, Florida. Just it reminds me of our Union Avenue in Bakersfield. Same type of situation. You get anything you need. And they popped us, and I go to jail. She was able to get a room. They didn't take her since I was the owner of the vehicle. And they found some guns, which it was not illegal to have guns, concealed weapons. It wasn't illegal. They were concealed in my El Camino. And so there was three agencies that actually arrested us. And so I'm not saying a word. I go see the judge. I'm not saying a word. And I spent some time in jail without even seeing an attorney. And they let me out one day. I said, why are you letting me out? They said, well, there's been a mix-up in the count of the drugs that we found. One agency had one amount, and another agency had a different amount. They were taking my stuff, is what they were doing. That's a true story. So they had to let me out of jail, and they gave us one option to go back to California. I said, give me my guns, and I sold my guns, pawned my guns off, and we made it back to California. But in between then, she was pregnant. My wife was pregnant, and we lost that baby, stillborn. Yeah, it's a direct result from our lifestyle, Joe. I promise you. Everybody says, well, you don't know. It was. Come on. Plus, she was a little bit older, and we lost that child, and that was a heartbreaking thing. And then the alcohol just progressed after that. So we made it back to California, and things got a little bit worse with the drinking. And she was a very violent individual. She liked to break things and hit on me. And we brought her 2 kids. We went to Indiana, picked up her 2 kids, which was not very much younger than I was, because she was 10 years older. They were probably 8 to 10 years, a little bit younger than me. And it just was not a pretty sight. I was not able to be the adult that, you know, a stepdad or any dad's supposed to be. When I started drinking at age 12, and as much as I was drinking and doing other stuff, there was a disconnect from becoming an adult. That was my life. My social and my emotional coping skills was with drinking and drugs. So I didn't know how to adjust to life as I grew older. Emotionally, I was basically the same. But as I got older, my adult state didn't really match up with my age. So one night she thought I was cheating on her. She found a number, which back then I was a manager of Electrolux, and I was a service manager of Electrolux. And I got a phone call one day. Here's the story. This is back when ATMs first started to get popular. So I went to the bank. I got the application for an ATM card. I get back to my office, and the phone rings as soon as I get in, and I looking for something to jot down the number because this lady needed some parts, and I put the number on that application. And then I get home, not thinking anything about it, drinking. And my ex, well, yeah, my wife then found that number and was swearing up and down that I was cheating on her. Something I've never done in any relationship is to cheat on the somebody that I'm with. So that created a physical fight. Her and her kids came at me, and um, and my stepson picked up a lawn chair and swung it at me and missed. It hit my ex in the face, which left a huge bruise. Um, I had a broken bone. My finger was broken. They were really trying to do a number on me, and I finally was able to leave. And I called the cops myself, Joe. And they showed up, and guess who they arrested? My ex got those kids to lie about that. And of course, I was heartbroken. I was really heartbroken because it was love at first sight. So went through a jury trial, and I was innocent all the way. And she got the kids to lie on the on the chair, the witness chairs. And are we still there? We're good.
Yeah.
We had a little glitch. And I don't tell this story a lot in AA meetings. It just doesn't belong in an AA meeting as far as I'm concerned. But this is the calamity and chaos that I lived in. And so the judge knew I was being railroaded. And when I went to go turn myself in, he said, "Time served," because he knew. Come to find out that even the district attorney was dating her now, and we divorced. And it gets worse. About a year after we split up, Joe, she was involved in an alcohol-related car accident. And it killed her. She was a drunk driver. And I didn't find out about it for a couple of years. My parents didn't want to tell me. And when I found out, it just tore me apart. You can't drink that stuff away. I tried. You can't drink that stuff away. Just being the person that I was not able to be an adult to those stepkids. I was not able to be a good father figure, stepfather figure to those kids. They were not much younger than I was. So they suffered a little bit from that too. Those are two amends that I cannot make. Am I willing? You better believe I'm willing, but there's two amends that I cannot make. So that's pretty much the end of that. Life goes on, still progressing in my drinking and doing other things. And went back into the towing industry, and then that was really not doing it for me, because in the middle of the night, you're always going to get a call at 2 a.m. when the bar is closed. And most of the time, Joe, when I went out there, I was the one being drunk in that tow truck. I would hold my breath when cops would walk by me, so they wouldn't smell the alcohol on me. It was just a lot of wasted time and wasted energy, and I didn't know what to do. So that was pretty much my life up until the mid-30s. And I was not able, so I quit doing that, because I quit being a tow truck operator, and I was doing heavy duty, medium duty, small duty. I was recovering stuff from out of rivers, picking up cars off of people so they can pull them out and to determine if they were dead or not. I just was not able to do that anymore, even though I was brought up in the business. So I had to find something else. And it was a difficult time. So that was my early to mid 30s.
Now I know you always talk about you ended up living in a is it an orange field? Am I right about that? Or in a
You kind of break it up. It was a camp trailer. It was a 20-foot Fireball 1978 Fireball camp trailer. Um, because I was not capable of living life um, on life's terms. I was always nervous, and I was always discontent, and I was those hideous four horsemen were always coming to get me. That impending doom sooner or later started to set in. I bought that camp trailer because I was unable. By that time, I was unable to keep a full time job. I joined the union, the pipeline union, and I pipelined for about 5 years, which didn't help my drinking at all because you're always going out of town and drinking. Shit, you're using drugs on the job site, and so I would always get these jobs that I knew would end before long, where I can collect unemployment and I can live in that trailer and hide away from people. And I did a lot of that. I was doing other stuff too. Uh, and I was always broke. So I was doing a little crank here and there. And then I was paranoid that people were actually coming out watching me in that trailer because I'm the guy they need to be watching, right? That paranoia stuff. So I'm very intuitive. So I took some fishing line, and each one of my curtains in that camp trailer, I hooked up to a swivel, and then I centrally located each one of those fishing lines to that curtain where I could trailer and then pull on that one curtain, peek in there to see if out there to see if anybody's watching, let it back slowly, do another one, peek through that window. I come up with an idea that I'm going to have an early warning system. And I took some beer cans and I wrapped around the orange trees with fishing line. That way they could have a little trip early warning system. That didn't last long because I needed the recycles. So I had to pick up all my aluminum cans and go recycle. And that was, again, that's my life. I was always broke. Whenever I did have money, I wouldn't spend. I wouldn't try to save it. I would always spend it. And alcohol was always and other stuff. It was always the top of my priority list. But several times where I would be hungry and not have any money, I would have enough money for alcohol or whatever, and then buy a bag of potatoes. That way I could eat some raw potatoes. I would run out of propane in that camp trailer and lose all the heat that I had, and try to stay warm with the lantern in that camp trailer. It didn't work very well. Um, so I had this shotgun that I needed to pawn off. By this time, I'm praying to God, I don't let me wake up to do this stuff all over again. It was hard work to stay drunk and and to do that stuff that I did every single day. It got to where I could learn how to. Uh, I didn't need a whole lot of money. All I needed to do was go recycle, uh, sell plasma. Every once in a while, I would write bad checks and then try to cover it before it came due for alcohol. That was my life. That was my that was that was my main focus. How am I going to do this today? And I had this shotgun that I was thinking I was going to pawn off, but I didn't have any gas in that old piece of shit van of mine. I had a 3/4 ton Dodge Ram van converted, and it probably saved my life more than anything else, because when I got so messed up, I could actually just pull the curtains closed, and sleep it off. But I didn't have any gas in that van, and I had this idea, and I'm living 10 miles out of town in a little crappy trailer park that everybody else in that trailer park was doing exactly the same things that I was doing. So I took off hitchhiking with this shotgun down Edison Highway, and nobody would stop to pick me up carrying that shotgun. And I walked all the way to the pawn shop, 10 miles away. And I was able to, that's how much I needed to drink. I was able to walk that 10 miles with that shotgun to Ace Pond on 19th Street in Bakersfield, California, and then get pennies on the dollar. I was able to get rides back real easy, but that's what I did. I sold a lot of plasma to buy alcohol. I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of a whole lot of stuff that I did. It was not a life, Joe. There was nothing redeeming there. There was no quality there. And I was drinking myself to death in that trailer. And two things would always pop into my head. I'm going to become a wet brain in that trailer because I drank a lot and I did a lot of other stuff. Or I'm going to die in that trailer and nobody's going to find me until they smell my body. Those are the two things that always popped in my head. You don't get a lot of visitors in camp trailers 10 miles out of town. Nobody really wanted anything to do with me by this point. I burned a lot of bridges. So, and that's 5 years in a, that's insanity. Nobody lives in a camp trailer for 5 years in the middle of an orange grove, out just 10 miles out of town. And I learned that in AA. The progression was getting worse. I'm getting sick now. I almost died from an abscess of a tooth because dental hygiene and other hygiene was not that important. And I had such an abscess that it was actually closing off the air in my airway. It was that bad. And then so I had to go take care of it. I didn't take care of things until I absolutely had to. And I'm losing weight. I'm drinking all my meals. I'm losing a lot of weight. And and I'm working temporary jobs, just jobs that I couldn't get a real job. I couldn't pass a drug test. This is back when they were really drug testing a lot, back in the 90s. You had to get a drug test before you went to work anywhere. So, and I was praying to God not to wake up. I would stand there and I would yell out, "What the fuck is wrong with me?" as I'm drinking something else. What is wrong with me? I didn't know what was wrong with me.
Mm.
And then I would just pray not to wake up. And then, of course, I did. So I finally landed a job through a temp serve in Delano, California at a power plant, mucking out cooling towers, picking up trash, sweeping floors. And they liked the way I worked. And it's 45 minutes from that camp trailer to Delano, California, a little agriculture town. And they liked the way I work. And they talked to me. He said, we want you to come to work for us. And I was honest with them. I said, there's no way I can pass a drug test. Smoking a lot of weed and doing some other stuff. So I said, I will try. So I did. So all I did was stick to drinking for a month, and I was able to get cleaned up a little bit. And I was able to pass a drug test, and I went to work for these guys. And my drinking got worse. Now I'm traveling 45 minutes to work, 45 minutes back home, and drinking both ways. I'm drinking on the way to work too. I'm drinking on the way home. This might sound stupid to some people, but every single day I had to stop on the side of the freeway to take a piss. That's how much I was drinking. I could just open up the van doors and piss right there. But it was starting to bother me. All that drinking and driving was starting to bother me. And I'm missing some work now. I'm lying about work. I would try to drink the first one down. And then I couldn't hold it down, and I would throw it back up. That was happening a lot. Dry heaves, alcohol poisoning. And one day I just could not get the window down fast enough in my van, and I puked all over that van. I don't ever want to forget those moments because I don't do that today, of course. But that was my life. So it's really bothering me that I'm drinking and driving. Hold on a second. So I come up with this idea. I'm going to move out of this camp trailer, and I'm going to move to Delano to be closer to work. I was able to find a studio apartment 5 minutes away from work on 5th Street. This street in Delano is pretty well known. Anyway, so I get there. I moved out of that camp trailer on April 1st, 1999, April Fool's Day, thinking that was going to help my drinking. And it did. Now I have more time to drink, a lot more time to drink. So the progression just continues. And I would go to Bakersfield to get the other stuff that I needed because I didn't know anybody in Delano. You know, they say weed's not addicting, but I would drive 45 miles to get a dime bag of weed. So that, to me, that's insanity. Spend
That's
more
some
in
good
gas.
weed, Randy. That's got to be some good weed.
That was my buddy Marvin. You know, there's a story there too. Marvin was a good friend of my brother, and my brother died. He actually died when I was working at that power plant. My brother died from our disease a year and a couple of months before I got sober. He contracted AIDS. He was slamming dope, and he was gay. There's another story there. Not being careful, and he contracted AIDS, and this is way before they had any cocktails to keep you alive. And they were doing some pretty horrible stuff to him, just trying to keep him alive. And I would go visit him. You know, we didn't have the best childhood together because we were always butting heads. There was always my older sibling. We were always fighting, but I did care about my older brother, and I would go try to help him out as much as I could. And he died about a year and a couple of months before I got sober. Joe, I will never forget this. I was at his funeral, and my mom walks up to me, looks me straight in the face, and says, "Parents aren't supposed to outlive their children." And she's looking at me. I'll never forget that. Parents are supposed to outlive their children. So I get there April 1st, 1999, in this little studio apartment. I don't have anything, and I'm still drinking. I go to this, you know, alcohol was my deal. And working the long turnarounds, we were rotating shifts, and then we would come up on 4 days off. So I entered in my 4-day rotation off in this little town, Delano, and I'm gonna go visit every English speaking bar in Delano because it's an agriculture town. There's not that many English speaking bars in Delano. There was 4, and the last bar I drank at was called the Cuckoo Lounge, and the drinking was getting so bad I'm puking all day long now, and just trying to hold down the first one, just trying to feel a little bit better. And when I go back to work, trying to start my rotation back to work, and I go out there, and I had one job to do that day, amongst the other stuff. There was one extra little job, and that was to change out a 3/4 inch PVC ball valve out of a water line that went to a reclaimer tower, and I could not wrap my head around that. I could not. And it's as easy as go turn off the main water source, bleed it off, unscrew that ball valve, put some tape on it, screw a new one on, put the other end on, and go charge it up with the water supply. I could not wrap my head around that, and I was sick. And I'm drinking like through the night. I'm waking up through the night because, first of all, you drink as much as I do, you got to pee out through the night. So I'm getting up, I'm peeing, and I'm trying to drink myself back to sleep. This is going on for years, actually. Trying to drink myself back to sleep, and eventually I'm just going to work drunk. So I went to work that day. That was April 19th, 1999, and I felt like shit. And I called up to the control room, and I told my supervisor, Dennis, man, I'm really not feeling it today. I got a sinus headache, and I need to go home. I lied one more time, and I felt bad about that, and that stuck with me all day. And I drank all day, and I drank some through the night. And it was always on my head that you lied one more time, Randy, because of your drinking. So I get up the next morning and I walk out to that parking lot where my van was, puking, and I open up that van door, and I'm puking one more time, holding onto that van door, trying to make my way to work. And I said, I can't do this. And I, just like it says in our book, I'm at that jumping off point. I cannot do this anymore. Either I'm going to kill myself, I'm going to lose my job, but I cannot do this anymore. And I went back up to that apartment, and I called work, and I told Dennis it was about 7 a.m., April 20th of 1999, 420, by the way. I also quit smoking weed that day. And I told Dennis, and I was honest with him. I said, I'm drunk, and I can't come to work. I'm a drunk, and I don't know what to do. There's a telephone number, Dennis. I need you to go to that employees assistance program flyer that's taped up to the wall right there as soon as you walk out of the office, out of the control room into the bathroom. I've been eyeing that thing. I don't know why. I've been eyeing that thing. It says, if you have trouble with alcohol, if you have trouble financially, if you have trouble with mental issue, family issue, here's our number. So Dennis, I need that number. And he knew, they knew, Joe, they knew, because they even mentioned it. Man, you smell like alcohol today. I would hold my breath at work too. So he finally gave me that number. And actually, I have that flyer on my wall right now. And I called that number, 800-332-7987. And a woman by the name of Sherry answered the phone. And I won't ever forget this conversation. I told her, I'm drunk now. I need help. I don't care if I lose my job. I don't care what's going to happen. I just can't do this anymore. And within a few more minutes, the rehab was on the phone with us. And I'm talking to Mr. Spencer, the owner of the rehab in Laguna Beach. And so we're talking about what's going to happen. And they said, there's a bus ticket waiting for you. They already set this up. There's a bus ticket waiting for you at the Delano Greyhound bus station. So I called work, and I told them what was going on. I called my parents, told them what was going on. And I just don't care. I can't do this anymore. So the ticket was for noon that day. And this is like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning when I got off the phone with the employees assistance program. So I'm putting stuff together. I'm calling work, and I was able to get my partner at work to go down and pick up my van at the bus station. My van's sitting at the job site parking lot for a month. But here's what happened. I don't have any luggage. I don't know anything about luggage. I know a lot about little bitty market plastic bags. I bought a lot of alcohol. I had a lot of these plastic bags. So I packed my clothes into these plastic bags, high class. I packed the rest of the alcohol. I packed the rest of the weed. And here's something else that I did. And I don't know why I did it. I packed my bills too. I put the bills that I had in those little trash bags. And I drove down there, and I get on the bus, and I'm drinking all the way to, till I ran out. And my last drink was at the LA Greyhound bus station in the back. My last little bit of weed too. I was not the only one in that alley drinking or doing whatever. It was a hot King Cobra, because it's a few hours between Delano and LA. And I'm drinking. I'm trying to hold this down. A hot King Cobra. If anybody's ever drank King Cobras, it doesn't really taste good to begin with. But I can tell you, when it's hot, it sticks with you. So they finally dropped me off. How much time we got? We good?
You're okay.
Just outside of Laguna Beach. Upper Laguna. And so I get there, and there's a cab waiting for me. And I'm eyeing these neon lights that says Coors Light and Michelob, and at this liquor store. And the cab driver opens the window and says, "Are you Randy?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Okay, I'm going to give you a ride to the rest of the way to the rehab." He says, "I've been there. This is your last stop. Do you want to go inside and get your last drink?" And I said, "No." I think that's the first time I ever said no to a drink. And I get in the cab, and he takes me down to the rehab, which is on Pacific Coast Highway, South Pacific Coast Highway. And he drops me off in front. He says, "You got to go through those stainless steel doors there." So I grabbed my bags and stuff like that. And I don't know anything about rehab. I know stuff about jail. So I figured, well, they're going to delouse me in rehab, and they're going to take all my stuff, and they're going to frisk me and stuff like that. And I really didn't know anything about it. I walked through these huge stainless steel doors, and there was somebody waiting there for me. And they took me into a little room where they would ask you questions like that. They took all my stuff. They took a Polaroid picture of me. For those who don't know what a Polaroid is, it's a square camera where you push a button and a picture comes out, and you have to shake it. It was a long time ago. I tell that story at the podium. People laugh. And I looked like hammer shit, Joe. I had on this greasy hat, and I had on a flannel shirt that had holes in it, and I had on some greasy pants. And I didn't know. And that's the way I went to rehab. And they took all my stuff, and I'm starting to come down, and they gave me Librium. I am so grateful that they had the foresight to see that I was drunk when I walked in there, and they gave me Librium so I didn't go through DTs and didn't die from withdrawals, because people do die from withdrawals from alcohol. And so the next morning I wake up and I walk out of the room, and I was my first day sober. April 21st, 1999, my first day sober. They gave me a big book, and they gave me a 24-hour chip. This is California. They have metal chips, aluminum chips, and it was a 24-hour chip. That's the only 24-hour chip I've ever taken. So I'm doing the thing. They're constantly monitoring me. They don't let me go, or anybody go anywhere by themselves. So I couldn't even. I smoked back then. I couldn't even walk across the street to buy some stamps and some cigarettes without somebody being with me. And they would take us to meetings, and we had meetings inside, and they had great food and stuff like that. And they have what is called H&I panels come in. Hospitals and institution panels is what we call it back in the West Coast. And so I'm starting to do okay. I'm kind of trying to read the book. They want you to do the first 3 steps, and I did that. They didn't want you to do a 4th step. They had counselors and they had therapists, and I had this one therapist. He wanted to do some role playing, and he wanted to find out why I drank. He says, "Okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to play." I said, "Oh, you want me to beat the shit out of you?" He didn't like that answer. I said, "I'm not here to do your psychobabble bullshit." And the head counselor come in and says, "Okay, we're not going to do this." So 2 weeks into this rehab, Joe, I'm standing in line to go to another meeting, and it dawned on me. I didn't think about taking a drink all day. All day. I can't tell you how many years that's happened. Been a lot of years since I was able to say I went all day without thinking, because we didn't do that when we were growing up. We didn't think about not taking a drink. But I did. So, hey, I'm good now. So I have this great idea. I'm going to tell the owner of the rehab, Mr. Spencer, that I think I'm good. I'm going to go back home. I didn't think about taking a drink all day. He's been around a while, and he knew that was not the best remedy or the best idea. So you know what this guy does? We would go on Wednesday nights. We would go out to a huge meeting called the Gucci Club. About 400 people in this meeting in Laguna Beach. But the guys in the rehab would go meet some other people at a Chinese restaurant in Laguna Beach. And so Mr. Spencer had this bright idea. He's going to tell Dr. Paul that Randy says he's good now. He's going to go home. He's going to leave the rehab. Dr. Paul is the same Dr. Paul in the third edition and the fourth edition. Third edition is Alcoholic Addict, page 449, and then in the fourth edition is page 417. It's the same Dr. Paul. Joe, I don't put plans like this together. I promise you. I am incapable of putting stuff in line like this that later on would save my life. So Mr. Spencer introduced me to Dr. Paul and says, hey, Dr. Paul, Randy says he's ready to go. He's only been here a couple of weeks. Dr. Paul pulled me aside in this Chinese restaurant, and I can tell you exactly what was going on. There was a huge porcelain dragon there. There was some koi fish in a little pond over here, a huge thing of fortune cookies, and it's this Chinese restaurant just to the hill. And we walk over by the cash register, and Dr. Paul gets into my face, looks me straight in the eye. He's a short guy too, so he looks me straight in the eye. In fact, this picture's on my wall. And he looks at me, he stares me up, he says, I bet you're the type that never finishes anything in your life. Then he started to get really stern, and he's pointing me in the chest. He says, why don't you finish what you started? And he was not a happy camper. This was not a pat on the back. Oh, it's going to be okay. He was not an enabler at all. He says, finish what you started. And I'll never forget that. That was actually May 5th of 1999. Because of him, I'm sitting here today. And he wrote in my book, Acceptance and Serenity. And I have that tattooed on my arm. I was able to, after 10 years of sobriety, I was able to lift that out of the book. My friend who was a tattoo artist, and we put it on my arm. Acceptance and serenity. That was his saying. And I finished rehab. I did. And it got better. Things got better. And then when I went to go home, I didn't take a bus home. I flew home. I didn't have plastic bags. I went out. So now I'm becoming an adult. And I left rehab after 30 days. I finished the program. And I flew back home, and I go back to work. And I'm trying to do the deal, and I'm still scared, and there's still that impending doom. And I'm going to meetings, and I'm thinking I know what I'm talking about. And Joe, and I would go to meetings, and I would bitch and cry and complain, and I was a victim. Don't you know? That's why I drank. I'm a victim, and I wanted people to feel sorry for me. I was a victim. I didn't say one word about the solution. I didn't open up that $21,000 big book that they gave me. And all I was doing was going to meetings, and I said I'm an alcoholic. And all I did was remove the alcohol. And my life got miserable. Just as miserable as it was before. And I said, fuck, I know how to fix this shit. And I'm thinking about where I'm going to go drink, because I can't just go to one liquor store. I have to plan it out where the second one was going to come into play too. I'm not alcoholic. I don't go to the same liquor store twice in one day. I don't want anybody to think I'm an alcoholic. So I'm planning it out. And then these two thoughts. Oh, by this time I'm at this meeting, so called the South Chester Group. It was a kind of a newcomer meeting. It was at the small apartment. It had been there for years. There were more signature cards in the 7th tradition basket than dollar bills. It was that kind of meeting. where so I went in and I did that shit one more time. I was bitching and complaining and crying. And there was this guy that was sitting on my right, and he was a homeless guy, more than likely, because he smelled pretty bad, and I could smell the alcohol on him. And he was just kind of nodding in and out. And I didn't pay any attention to him. And I did that crap one more time, Joe, and I was bitching and crying and complaining. I'm a victim. And it must have his chair. And he gets right, you need to make a gratitude list from a drunk telling me I need to make a gratitude list. Again, I don't put plans like that together. I am incapable of forming that stuff. So that day that I thought I was going to go drink, those actually three thoughts popped into my head. That drunk getting in my face and telling me I need to make a gratitude list. Randy, you say you're an alcoholic, but you don't have a sponsor. You're not working the steps. You don't have any commitments. All you do is go to meetings and you bitch and cry and you complain. You don't say one word about the solution. And then Dr. Paul pops into my head. Finish what you started. Finger in my chest. And I didn't drink. I didn't go out. And I made a vow that day. From now on, I'm going to stop bitching and complaining. And I'm going to start talking about the solution, which means I need to open up the book. You know, Joe, when I opened up that book into the doctor's opinion, I started getting those aha moments. You remember me saying that I would scream out, what the fuck is wrong with me? I found it. This is what's wrong with me. It's in this book. And I'll never forget that moment, that aha moment. This is what it, and I started to get a little intrigued about it. So I started reading more and more, and I got involved. And I got a great sponsor, Bobby Moorhead, which took me through the steps and gave me my very first commitment. Back then, they gave you stuff to do. You didn't have to ask. If you had a good sponsor, they told you what you were going to be doing. And Bobby Moorhead did that. Bobby Moorhead was a great man. Then he passed away. He was married to a girl by the name of Anita. Anita was one of us too, alcoholic. And I remember the day I was going to do my fifth step. And I'm going to, and I walk into his house in his kitchen. Anita was diagnosed with cancer, and she's on chemo, and it was terminal. And she's, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go with the girls while you guys do your fifth step. That woman left us so we can work a step. That is big. That is big in my life. Somebody that could be inconvenienced like that to allow us to work the fifth step. And I remember it vividly. And I didn't leave out anything. Bobby knows everything about me. And when he died, Anita died first. The big joke was Bobby Moorhead marries Anita, and now her name is Anita Moorhead. It was a big joke around AA, but she was a great gal, and Bobby was a great guy. And so I had to pick up my second sponsor, which was Chuck Murray. And I fell in love with Chuck. It was just a soft, kind guy. He didn't take my soft, kind, gentle guy. His nickname was Dr. Love, because he would talk about love and tolerance. Well, if you say you have love, the tolerance is automatic. That was Chuck. And he was a big, he loved a new pair of glasses. He actually knew Chuck C a little bit. He had a lot of sobriety. A New Pair of Glasses was his favorite book. So, and Chuck taught me a lot. And I was able to stay sober with these guys. And my favorite group in Bakersfield was the men's stag meeting, kind of like our meeting that we have. And it's the men in AA that allowed me to become an adult. I started making adult decisions. My mom died. She was diagnosed with cancer when I was 4 months sober. And it gave her like a year to live. And she died at 11 months when I was 11 months sober. So she was able to see one of her sons get sober. Again, I don't put plans like that together. And my very first adult intuitive thought was when we were in the mortuary talking about mom's plans. And my sister says, well, what are we going to do with Poncho? Pancho was my older brother. He was in the urn. And here's my smart ass. Well, let's just put him in the casket with Mom. He was always her favorite anyway. And that's what we did. We talked to the mortuary guy, Mish. Mr. Mish was his name. And that's what we did. We put Pancho in the casket with Mom. And I was sober for that. There's a lot that happened in those years. And my dad later on, a couple of years later, was diagnosed with dementia. He had lived with my sister for about 12 years after my mom passed away. And Robin, my sister, was telling me, Pa, she called him Pa. Pa called today and said he couldn't find the bathroom in a 2-bedroom house that he'd been in for 12 years. So I started devoting a lot more of my attention to my dad and my sister. And I went over there and started helping my dad out and removing things so he couldn't get up on the roof anymore and take care of stuff like that. We had to talk to him about not driving anymore because if you know anything about dementia, you can wake up one day and it's a completely different person now, completely different. And I was able to be there for that. I had made my amends. Here's the men in Alcoholics Anonymous, Joe, taught me how to hug other men. They loved me until I could love myself. They taught me how to hug other men. My dad was not a hugger. He was not a nurturer. He never told us boys that he loved us. I'm sure that he did, but he never told us that. Because of Alcoholics Anonymous, when I would go visit him, this is even before he had dementia, before I would leave, I would hug my dad. And in the beginning, he was very tense, very like, what are you doing? Very, very tense. But I would do it anyway. For a few years, it got better. It got a lot better. That tension went away. Then he started pulling me in, Joe. He started hugging me. Alcoholics Anonymous done that. When I changed, my dad changed. He started pulling me in and telling me that he loved me. That's the difference in being a dry drunk and having a program of recovery and showing love and being there for him. He died a day before my 18th sober anniversary. He died April 20th, 18 years after I got sober. And I was there with him when he died. Alcoholics Anonymous has done that. A lot of stuff has happened since then. A lot of stuff. And I didn't have to drink over it. Lost jobs, bankruptcy. I worked at an oil refinery where they went bankrupt and they laid off 300 people. It's a $100,000 a year job being an operator. And I had to, again, back to the school of hard knocks. And I tried to keep ends going. And then came the day I wrecked my motorcycle. And that was during COVID. I went for a ride. I was going to go to a town called Kernville, and I was going to put a deposit down on a campsite so a bunch of us could go camping. And I'm on my motorcycle just a few miles out from my house in Bakersfield, actually Oildale. And I'm going around the corner, and there's cars partially in my lane. There's a blind corner up in the mountains toward Greenville. And I threw on the brakes, and it was too late. It was a head-on collision. They estimated her doing 40 and me doing 40. So it was an 80-mile-an-hour collision, head-on collision. And I can tell you, Alcoholics Anonymous came through on that too. The cop walked up to me. He said, because I talked to him later, because I was out of it. And the cop says, you told me two things. He said, first of all, you said you were clean and sober, and we checked you out, and you were. And the second thing, he said, don't cut my clothes off of me, because I've been around. I know what they do. They cut all my leathers off of me. I was leathered up, fortunately, and I was wearing steel-toed boots, or I wouldn't be talking to you today. And that was during COVID. They rushed me to one trauma hospital. And they did as much as they could, and then they put me on a helicopter to another hospital in Fresno. So, and I barely remember that. They woke me up. I'd been married since then to a gal by the name of Elena, a great gal. In fact, she came out here for my 25th anniversary, and we were still best friends. It just didn't work out for a marriage, and she was my emergency contact. I barely remember laying on that table in the hospital, and the nurse kind of woke me up. He says, Elena's on the phone. Can I tell her the extent of your injuries? And I said, yes. Joe, I'm listening to this guy go on and on and on about all the injuries that my body has sustained for that accident. On and on. I don't think we have time to list them all here. But 5 units of blood was given to me. They had to put a stent in my aorta. They had to repair my pelvic bone. They had to prop my left leg up to get it set because it almost pulled it off the socket. And Alcoholics Anonymous pulled through. They helped my ex with my house. I couldn't go home for 6 weeks. She took care of all the insurance stuff. My neighbors helped her with the lawns. My neighbors liked me. My neighbors liked me. To me, that's a big deal. Because I remember that past life. I don't live that life anymore.
Yeah.
And she took care of everything. We still talk today a lot. Yeah. She just celebrated 11 years of sobriety too. But that's what Alcoholics Anonymous will do. And I managed to get out of that wheelchair in about 6 months. And I was still in a lot of pain. I had to make a decision because they were not going to give me disability because I was able to walk and talk. And so I made a decision to retire and not to retire in California. Nobody should retire in California. I went to taxes. So I made a decision and a plan to move out here. And I retired. I retired, Joe. I have an IRA. I retired. I sold both of my houses.
Yeah. Pretty amazing.
I no longer live in a camp trailer. I live in a regular home.
Yeah.
So I could go on and on and on about what AA has done for me.
Well,
there's nothing that, yeah.
I appreciate what you shared, Randy, and the journey you've been on and the good, the bad, the ugly. It's pretty amazing, and I think that it'll definitely bring some people some hope, and that's really what this is all about. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we do our rapid fire questions?
I wake up grateful every single day. Not that they were just able to put me back together where I can walk and I can talk. And I am so grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous. I wake up grateful every single day. That's I have today. Everything to drink this Diet Pepsi is because of Alcoholics Anonymous and the men showing me how to be an adult and how to work a program of recovery. It's not me. I heard, oh, Randy, you're so blessed. I hear people say that. No, trust me. My God doesn't play favors and not bless other people. The blessing Anonymous. It's what I do in Alcoholics Anonymous. It helps me stay sober. And I get to help other people not take a drink one day at a time. I'm not blessed. The blessing is divinely. It's where I get my strength and I'm in it. So there's nothing original here. Everything that we've gone through, somebody else has gone through it and they've gone through it sober. And they could teach us how to do that. Experience, strength, and hope. So, okay. I think we went kind of long, but I was talking about me.
We love to talk about ourselves, don't we?
Favorite subject.
Well, I can't let you go without our rapid fire questions. So if you are ready, sir, What is your favorite recovery slogan?
It works. It really does.
What is your least favorite recovery slogan?
Some people must die for others to live. That's such bullshit.
What do you think is your sobriety superpower?
Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness.
If you could say one thing to your former self, what would it be?
Not to wait so long to understand my life was unmanageable. Removing the alcohol was one thing.
What song do you play to lift your spirits when you need a boost?
The Who is my favorite band. And one of my favorite songs is Who Are You?
If you could grant yourself one wish to help with your recovery, what would it be?
Just to be a little bit more humble. I try to live a humble life. Sometimes my ego gets in the way.
What step do you love the most?
Step 11.
What step do you love the least?
That's a hard one. I don't know if I have at least one. They all help me to connect the dots. They all help me to connect those dots of all those flashbacks that I have, and there is no more morbid reflection. Our past is our greatest asset. I don't regret anything. I've worked the steps. I've done all that. I'm not going to live in guilt. If I think I am living in guilt, then I need to talk to my sponsor, and we need to work on it.
What is one of your favorite movies?
Cowboys and Aliens.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You're not an alcoholic.
I love it. Thank you so much, Randy, for taking the time today.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
That part in the book, it says, science may one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet. They can't give me what Alcoholics Anonymous give me. They can give me a pill where I'm not going to crave alcohol or drink the way I used to, but that's not alcoholism. Alcohol is just a symptom. My disease is perception and honesty, or the lack of self-centeredness. They can't give me a pill for that. They cannot give me a pill that's going to give me what Alcoholics Anonymous has given me, that unity and recovery and service, that fellowship. There is no pill for that. So, and I'm kind of in the mindset, well, if one pill will work, maybe two would be better. See, I'm always going to go to that because I am not well.
Yeah.
Two pills would be better. Okay, I think that's it. You can cut that part out.
You're not alone, buddy. Well, thank you for taking the time today and sharing your experience, strength, and hope. New episode is released every Thursday at noon. You can listen to the show in your favorite podcast apps, Amazon Audio, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the. Please follow, like, subscribe, and share because someone out there needs to hear this today.
It's just a laid-back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's experience, strength, and hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to The Cup of Joe Show.